Hello, everyone, and welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's the 17th of July, 2026. It's Friday. I hope everyone's having a great Friday out there. We are midway through July now. Before you know it, August will be upon us. That's the worst month for me here in Phoenix, but boy, I'll tell you, I struggle through it. And once we get past August, things get a little bit better. And hope things are going good weather-wise where you are. Of course, we've had a lot of extreme weather all over the country this year, but stay safe, stay dry, and hopefully we can keep you entertained for a little while. Before we get started, I just want a quick shout out to two of our friends here in the community. Our friend Buster joining us from Edinburgh, Scotland with a super chat, in lieu of super chat, an Amazon gift card. Thank you as always, Buster. And our friend Lou Greenia joining us from Vermont with a PayPal contribution. Just prior to the show starting, both of these gentlemen showed additional support with their contributions that we use to fund this channel. We're not corporate backed. Now, speaking of not corporate backed, I want to remind you that when I need to buy license keys for Windows and Office, I know this looks like a traditional sponsorship to you, but I have to tell you that the folks over at VIP-URCDKEY support us, and we want to support them back. But I will tell you that when I go to buy product keys for the products that I want to sell, computers I want to sell, I have to get my product keys from somewhere, and it's got to be legitimate. I've got to have support. I can't do that to my customers, where I just leave them dangling with something that may be a little sus. And the way I buy my keys is exactly the same way I'm going to show you. Same price, everything's exactly the same. And I don't make any commission on this, okay? So I'm just telling you, because most businesses will not tell you where they source their goods from. They wouldn't never let the customer see how the sausage is made, is the old expression. So if you look at any of my past live videos like this one I'm putting up on the screen here, you'll see that there's a gray box underneath my name, and it says more. And when I click on that, all the links for everything I'm talking about in the subject of that video are contained there, including the links for the Windows Office and license keys. Now, you don't have to use these links. They're just there for you to conveniently go directly to the product you're looking for. If you want to go to their website and search for it manually, go for it. Makes no difference to me. I'm just trying to keep this easy for you. When you try and add the product to the cart, it needs you to sign in. If you don't have an account, it's free to make one. They're not there to collect your data. What they're doing is they need a way to send you a receipt, a download link, and a product key securely. And they'll also keep track of it in your account history so that you can go back at any time to look up any past purchases. Right there in the promotion code, I just typed the word Carey, and my price just went down by 25%. So at that point, whether or not you choose to use the promotion code, that's only for you. If you don't want to save the 25%, don't use the product code. I cannot emphasize enough, whether you choose to save money or you don't, I don't make any money on it either way, based on whether or not you use the link or you use the code. It doesn't matter. I use the link and I use the code, and I want you to know how I'm doing that, because unlike most other content creators here on this platform, I'm here with full transparency. I'm going to show you the inner workings of the business, at least to a point where it doesn't get personal. And I want you to see or grasp a little bit more of the complexities of running a computer repair business. And at the same time, if that's not of interest to you, to follow some of the same steps and procedures that earn me a profit that, if you did the same, would likely save you some time and money. So that's what we're here to do. And we're going to continue in that vein today with our subject matter, which is DNS. The domain name system, we've talked about this in years past. It's been a long time since I've talked about it. And one of my concerns is that I've had a couple of customers get infected with viruses, even though they had paid antivirus and paid anti-malware installed. It still didn't protect them. As far as I know, that same virus has gone undetected by a paid version of Malwarebytes for about 2 or 3 years now. It's hard for me to remember how long it's been. It's been such a long time. It could be 3 years. And Malwarebytes does nothing about it. While you're infected and it's obvious you're infected, you can do a full 3-hour deep scan and Malwarebytes says your system is clean. The lesson from this is there is no one solution. I think one of the things that I find personally frustrating is people who want to look for absolutes. Like, if you do this, this absolutely cannot happen. Absolutes would be like death or taxes. Those are absolutes. Everything else in the world, we do our best to provide protections. But there's a difference between wearing a seatbelt and driving an armored tank. And sometimes I run into very technical people who for me, are overcomplicating something. So there are processes and procedures that we use in corporate America or in large organizations with, hundreds or thousands of employees. These organizations have an IT department, and that's their full-time job. The people in the IT department is to restrict users from being able to infect their computers. A lot of people can't discern the difference. Either they won't or they're unable to discern the difference between a small organization or a home user. Then as such, will apply the most complex lockout scenarios that make it as unpleasant as possible for a home user or a small business to use Windows, because they're always having to skirt around obstacles that they voluntarily placed in their way because unfortunately the IT person they picked sort of set things up and abandon them, right? They don't stay there full time. So anytime they run into an obstacle, they have to call the IT person until they eventually learn how to get around the obstacles themselves. Well, that's why that's generally reserved for large corporations. And even that's not foolproof either. So nothing I'm about to show you do I want you to walk away with saying that it isn't foolproof or more importantly, that it won't cause any harm. I am concerned that sometimes people implement security solutions that do cause more harm. They get in the way more than they ever help. And take, for example, Malwarebytes. With the paid version of Malwarebytes, if it's not protecting me from a very obvious threat, I don't know if it's worth paying for anymore. Now, I understand a threat can just come out today and they need time to respond, but this has been nearly 3 years and Malwarebytes still continues to ignore it. So it may be time for me to start to continue to ignore paying for Malwarebytes. Use it for free, that's fine. But when I'm paying for it, I expect better. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is an additional layer of, well, let's just call it like a seatbelt. It's not there to prevent you from getting into an accident. It's there to help reduce the injuries, but you could still perish even though you have a seatbelt on, okay? So it's not an end-all, be-all absolute solution. It's just adding another bit of seamless and free protection that should not cause any harm. Now, whether or not it's helpful, well, that remains to be seen. Just like Malwarebytes, it appeared to be helpful until it wasn't anymore. The great thing about making this change is that not only is it free, it's very easy to do, and it may just save your bacon. It might. Now, I'm not suggesting that what I'm telling you with regards to security is intended for large organizations. I don't believe any large organizations are going to YouTube looking for any advice on how to protect their large organization, because I don't think you'd ever get large if that's the information that you're following. This information is intended for home users and small businesses that perhaps still do things themselves, that are on a very restricted budget, and they just want to add another layer of padding. And hopefully it's enough. Now, with that being said, set your expectations accordingly. Some people don't mind having to jump around 3 hoops every single time they want to install a program. My customers would pretty much fire me if every single time they wanted to make a change to a computer, they needed administrator permissions. And furthermore, I would have to charge them more because they'd be contacting me all the time and my time isn't free. So it's for each individual to decide. And again, even setting it up that way, the risk of getting infected is not eliminated. It's reduced, but there's no way to eliminate the risk entirely and absolutely unless you unplug the computer from the internet. That's an absolute. If you all do that, your computer will be safe. And that's the equivalent of saying we can cure all cancer. All you have to do is stop breathing. Takes care of the problem, but the consequences of that are worse than the disease. So in some cases, when I hear of cures that are worse than a disease, I call it out because I don't want your mind poisoned by other enthusiasts or by people that are getting, academia, cybersecurity educations and thinking that that has anything to do with home users. That has to do with getting a job, right? So corporations have cyber requirements, cybersecurity requirements and processes. And no matter how well you're educated, you aren't the one deciding those. Somebody is, but if you're just going to school now to learn this stuff, you're likely doing it because you want a job in IT. You will not be deciding those security practices because your teacher at school said this or the book you read said that. You're going to follow the company's policies and procedures exactly the way the company tells you. What the school is doing is it's giving you some examples of what to prepare for in the real world. Now, most home users aren't going to go through that expense and time of education unless they plan to get into it that deep. And that's why the two don't mix. It's oil and water. They don't go together. Now, it's for each individual to decide on their own. And ultimately, even the tips I give you here today are your choice. I'm going to tell you what I do as a professional IT person. I've been in this business over 35 years. And you may dismiss what I say, or you may give me a great big hug and a kiss. Okay? Either way, I'm okay with it. When I run my business, I follow my policies and procedures. Let me be very clear. And my job here is to educate and share with you how my business has been around when so many other similar businesses have long since failed. In fact, many of the early companies I worked for don't exist anymore. They stopped existing decades ago. The larger organizations, the government agencies I've worked for, the large corporations I've worked for, they still exist today, although some under different ownership. And when there's new ownership, there's new policies, procedures. Sometimes there's a whole new IT department. So today, when I talk about OpenDNS, I do so because of the failure we experienced with the paid version of Malwarebytes. Because the paid version of Malwarebytes didn't protect my customers and continues to not protect them against this specific threat, I made sure to let Malwarebytes know how displeased I was and what easy steps they could have taken and can still take at any time to remediate this problem, or at least confirm with the user as it's happening that this is their intended, like let's say, for example, a remote access program is being installed because you mistakenly clicked on a link or opened an infected PDF file, whatever it is, or you thought was a PDF file. And Windows isn't really saying anything, they've got everything hidden. It would sure be nice that if you had a paid Malwarebytes running, that it would see this process as trying to install, interrupt it for a moment, and ask you for confirmation. Are you trying to install install remote access software, whatever it happens to be? Yes or no? It's really that simple. Why they don't do that, I don't know. But I do believe most users, when they falsely click on things due to social engineering, once they would receive this message, they would say, oh, no, that's not what I was trying to do. But they're not given the message, and Malwarebytes says it's a legitimate remote access program, so we're not going to flag it. And no matter, even after you're infected, and even when the attacker is freshly on your computer, controlling your mouse and downloading your data and transferring money out of your bank account, Malwarebytes says, I don't see anything wrong here. Are they in on the take? Let the conspiracy theories begin. So I am reevaluating if Malwarebytes is worth being paid for. For free, no problem. Because there are no absolutes, because nobody can guarantee it. what's the point of paying for it? You can change your DNS, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but most importantly, it's free. It will cause you zero harm. There are zero consequences. There's no reason not to do it. It's sort of like putting on a seatbelt. If you put on the seatbelt and it doesn't, you're never in an accident, there was no harm in wearing it. Didn't cost you a subscription fee every time you put it on. At the same time, that seatbelt may not 100% protect you, and you could have injuries from the seatbelt in a car accident. You can ask the drummer of Def Leppard how he lost his arm, for example. But these are exceptions. And again, that's why I want to emphasize the absolutists that are watching this video. There is no system that is perfect. It doesn't exist. The question is it worth your time and money? Well, given that this just takes a few seconds and that it's completely free and that there's no downside, and at the very best scenario, it will block you from when you accidentally click a wrong link or typo a website that takes you to a cloned website, it may prevent you from going there. But without it, it definitely won't. Okay? And yeah, Malwarebytes may also prevent you from going to an infected website, or it may not. But when you're paying for Malwarebytes and it allows those infections, and those infections have been around, in this case, nearly 3 years, they've had plenty of time to know about it and do something, and yet Malwarebytes chooses to do nothing. In this case, again, if Malwarebytes were free, you'd say, okay, it was free. But when you're paying for it and what they're selling it on is protecting you, they're not living up to their marketing promise. And as much as I like Malwarebytes, this is a pretty large grievance. I mean, this is almost unforgivable and has betrayed all sense of trust that I have had in them. Just one mistake or oversight that's been going on now. And I'm a pretty patient person, right? I'll say, okay, give them some time. Well, they've had years. They're well aware of it, and yet somehow they either don't know how to resolve it, which I've already given them the answer to, or they feel as though they don't have to. Well, as a consumer, I don't have to pay for their product. Okay, because if that was their normal business operation mode, is we're only going to block some of the malware regardless if we know about it or not, I would definitely not be paying for it. So the fact that they've known about this and still haven't done anything, that's where they've crossed the line with me. So what else can we do to fill in the holes that Malwarebytes is aware exist and does nothing? They just ignore them. You better hope you're not on a Malwarebytes ship on the sea, because it's taken on water, and if you don't patch the holes yourself, they can't be bothered. And if you paid to be on that ship, if you survive, I guess you could sue them. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate how easy using a DNS service is. When you type in something into your browser or you click on a link, it translates that to a number. The internet works on numbers. It doesn't work on names. Your phone works the same way. If I want to call somebody, I look in my contacts, and the contacts have the number of the person associated with the name of the person. I don't know anybody's phone number anymore. I did in the 1970s. Today, not so much. I depend on that contact list to translate the name into the number. That is the same as a DNS. And when you go to Google, you're actually going to an IP address, a series of four sets of up to 3 numbers each, separated by a period. And if you're not a computer person, if you're not technically savvy, what the hell is this, right? So you just don't go to google.com, go to yahoo.com, and it just works. The problem is, if you've never changed it, if you're just using what your internet service provider has put in the modem, your internet service provider doesn't have the best DNS. It's not very fast most of the time, and it's not very up-to-date or updated as often as a company that just does DNS lookup. The good news for all of us is that you can change just the DNS. You can leave the rest of everything else your internet service provider has set for IP addresses and things like this, and just tell it you want to control the DNS. And many years ago, I talked about a service called OpenDNS. And I recently learned of a new one to me. It's new to me, called Quad 9. Now, what's the difference between them? OpenDNS, it can track where you're going. I mean, your ISP's DNS is doing that anyway. Okay, but Quad 9 doesn't track where you're going. So if you're more paranoid for some reason, or you're doing something illegal, you might want Quad 9. If it's a hard decision between OpenDNS or Quad 9, you're allowed to and recommended to use two DNSs, a primary and a backup DNS. You could set your primary to Quad 9 and your secondary to OpenDNS, or the other way around if you want to, and then get the protection of both. OpenDNS and Quad 9 are almost like Coke and Pepsi. They're very, very similar. I think OpenDNS is a little more user-friendly. And again, these are not one-size-fits-all absolute protection. Under no circumstances will changing the DNS make you 100% protected. But what we're doing is we're adding another layer of additional security that may or may not kick in depending on what you do. So if you do something and you make a certain mistake, it'll kick in and prevent you from going to a dangerous website where the malware or the virus is hosted. On the other hand, if it's not in their list yet, if it's new, or it hasn't been reported and they're not aware of it, you're still going to go through as if you didn't have it anyway. But because it doesn't cost anything, and at the very least, it may be much, much faster. You may notice it seems like your internet got faster simply by changing the DNS. Now, you can change the DNS one of two ways. You can either change it in your modem/router, depending on your setup, or you can change it on the individual PC. If you change it on the modem or router and all the PCs are getting their IPs automatically, they're also getting the DNS automatically issued by what you assigned here on the router. But if you're traveling around with a laptop and you always want that protection, regardless if you're on public Wi-Fi, hotel Wi-Fi, or you're at a friend's house, then you could set it manually in your network card settings of your Wi-Fi adapter in this example, or in the, regardless of what kind of network adapter you have, you'd go to the properties and the settings and you'll see where you can override the default DNS and plug in OpenDNS or Quad 9 or both. Have one as the primary, the other as the secondary. So that's what I'm going to show you today. So I'm going to plug in, I've got a TP-Link router here. I'm going to demonstrate how to do this. Now, every router is a little bit different in how they lay out the screen. So unless you have this exact router, your steps won't be exactly what I show you. I'd have to have 1,000 routers and show you 1,000 ways, and you're going to tune out. So I'm going to show you what you're going to look for on your router. And if your router is provided by your ISP, you may actually have to use an app on your phone to change it, just FYI. With many modern routers, that's also an option, but not necessarily the requirement some ISPs use. And once it's changed, you're just going to type in some numbers and hit save. Reboot everything on your network, and that's it. That's how easy this whole process is. You only need to do it once. No Windows update will undo it. No router update should undo it unless you reset the router yourself, or for some reason the router were to get reset. You would know that because your Wi-Fi password would change, everything would change. So one kind of goes hand in hand with the other with regards to router settings. And even if you updated a network card driver or anything like that, it shouldn't change any of your DNS settings. Just so you know, it's a one and done kind of a thing. Now, if there's any reason you don't like this, if there's some consequence that's happening to you that's quite uncommon, which I can't even imagine, let's just say you're trying to go to a legit website, it won't let you there. It thinks it's bad and you know it's good. you may need to remove it. You could set it back to automatic if you want to. There's no cost, and it only takes maybe a minute or two to take care of it. So that's what we're going to do today, and I've got everything here. I've got a mini PC we're going to use here as our demonstration. I've got a router we're going to use as our demonstration. I've got to get everything plugged in and turned on. And before I start this next step, I want to say hello to everybody joining us in the chat today. Let me start at the top here. Let's see. How is the video looking for everybody? Is there any problems? Arnold Albert joins us and says hello. Montana and DMuffin X, Sean Skinner and John Rogers say hello here in our live chat room with viewers all over the world interacting with each other and with me here. Marlena, our chat and channel administrator, hanging out, saying hello to everybody, along with David Herzog. I also see David Graham and Xander Vanderhoven. Mark Gaines joins us, as does Michael Lavelle and Andy W6AD. Manuel Heiss joins us. I also see Tony Aindow saying hello. Willem Peiter joining us from the Netherlands says hello. 3D Everything and Jim Kenny, as well as Mark Baggett, are joining us here in our live chat room. Dazzle555 says hello. Ben Laird from Scotland joining us, and Mark Leibowitz, a fellow computer technician from Chicago, says it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit where he is, sticky and smoky from wildfires up north. Yeah, we've got some really humid weather. July and August are the worst months to ever come to Phoenix because it's hot and it's humid. It's the few times of the year where you can look out and see cloudy, overcast skies much more often than the rest of the year. So I'm kind of enjoying it, although the humidity is a little new to me, so I'm a little sensitive to it. But I'll live. Bikeman says hello. He says his Xfinity XB8 gateway doesn't allow DNS changes in the gateway settings at all. Well, that's okay. There's other ways. Again, you can change it on the individual computer regardless. You could also just open up Gemini and just ask, how do I change the DNS on my, what did he say it was, Xfinity XB8 gateway, and see what it has to say. There may be a solution you're not aware of. I don't know if you've tried that. And he said Windows security is enough. Well, that's what everybody says until it isn't. You know, that's the funny thing about it. A lot of people who haven't had this affect them yet don't see a problem. And my job is, as a computer technician, is to not have a crystal ball. My job is to say, these are possibilities, okay? Let's take like a doctor. A doctor might say to you, you should be taking this, I'm gonna recommend this medication for this condition you have. And you might say to the doctor, I'm not aware I have any condition. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't need that medication. That's your choice. You may totally look at it that way if you want to. And the doctor will say, okay, well, I guess I'll see you in the emergency room. All right, I don't know. Doctor doesn't have a crystal ball. And maybe you'll get hit by a truck before the heart attack happens. But something like, if you take this prescription, you can avoid, or you can at least postpone having a heart bypass surgery. And you go, no, I'm fine, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you have a heart attack and you die or have a stroke, et cetera, et cetera. And then you realize, you know what, I should have probably followed the doctor's orders. Or it's entirely possible that you perish from some other way, and that you weren't around long enough for that to take effect. And in much the same way, the advice I'm giving you is free. There's no harm in it. So if the doctor said, hey, all you have to do is drink a glass of water every day, and you're like, no, I don't never drink water in my life, I'm not going to start now. You're welcome to stay with that attitude. You're not doing anything wrong. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But for everyone watching, there's nothing in it for me. If this saves your bacon, I don't get any reward for it. If this doesn't do anything for you, I don't get any punishment for it. I want to emphasize that I'm not making these videos specifically for a particular individual. And I try to vary the content as much as possible so that we don't alienate anybody of different interests. So if you feel that today's topic is not something you're interested in, you know, feel free to catch us on another video. And for everyone else, we'll continue with the lesson plan. Now, I just want to continue saying hello to everybody here. Eugene Hildago says hello. Gary Tatum says hello. There's Dorado Systems joining us. Elijah 52 Dickens. Andy Kane joining us. Chris Garrett says hello. He says he's in Atlanta, Georgia. I bet it's warm there, huh? The home of Coca-Cola. Dennis joining us here in the chat along with Paul Vercher. And I hope I haven't missed anybody, but welcome in. It's always good to see y'all. And I'm going to get this router plugged in. I left a post-it note on top of it with my login credentials because this normally sits on a shelf for months before I have a chance to plug it back in and use it again. So we'll also check to see if there's any firmware updates on the router. This is another one of those things. It doesn't cost anything. There should be no downside to doing it. And it's better to have it and not need it. Because if you find out that you need it, it's too late. So let's do that right now. Let's get this plugged in. I'll show you how I'm going to do this because I don't want to interrupt the broadcast with my network. I have to create sort of a separate network here so I can show you. So we'll plug in the power. And then I need to plug in a network source, an internet source to this, which I will use the normal Ethernet cable that you always see me use on mini PCs. This is going to plug in no differently. If I can get the cable untangled. There we go. I got it. So we'll plug that in. And then this needs power. So I'll grab my, again, the same power cable I use on mini PCs right here. And then there's an on-off button back here. That's all I need plugged in right now. I'll go ahead and turn that on. Now, while that boots up, I need to start plugging this in. Now, for this, I'm going to need a keyboard, mouse, power, and then I need to plug this in or connect wirely to this. So for that, I brought a spare patch cable, and we're just going to go from one of the ports on the back of the router to one of the ports on the back of the mini PC or small form factor PC. And that, most people only have one network port. Some computers have more than one. So if you're going to change your DNS, it'll be pretty obvious when you go to your adapter settings which one's in use. If you use them all, change them all. But if you're going to assign them manually, you'll want to assign them to the Ethernet port you're using, which if you only have one, that's real easy. Or if you don't use a particular one, if you're just frequently plugging it in, it could go in any of your options there. Just set it to all of them individually, one by one. Make the same change to as many adapters, Wi-Fi or wired. I need a power cable and an HDMI cable, so here's my HDMI, and we'll plug that in. And then I need my power cable, which right here is the power cable. We'll plug that guy in right there, and I'll flip the power switch on the power supply to the on position. For safety reasons, I usually leave that off. Usually. Sometimes I forget. All right, I need my keyboard and my mouse here, so I'm grabbing those real quick. This is where I get confused over which keyboard and mouse to use. The yellow one's for the streamer, the black one is for the mini PC. And we'll plug that in, that's our Wi-Fi dongle, and then we'll turn the mini PC on right there. We'll let that boot up. And this will be a great example of just a standard, very simple, easy configuration. If you do set it here, you don't have to set it here. But if you do want to set it on both, there's no harm in that either. You can do that both ways, or either way, your end result will be the same regardless. Now, when we talk about OpenDNS and Quad 9, the links for these sites and services is available in our show notes today. And I want to demonstrate what these look like. So we're going to open up a browser. And let me share the screen with you. Where's my screen capture? Right here. Is that going to work? Yes. Okay, and we're going to go just type open. Gotta use the right keyboard. OpenDNS.com. And this has been around a long time. I have made videos on this more than 10 years ago. I think I even wrote an article on Tom's Hardware maybe 20 years ago. It's been around a long time. So what we're interested in, and first of all, OpenDNS has since the last I've used it, has changed ownership. Cisco, the big corporate network company, owns it now, and they're reputable, but they're obviously a big corporation. But nonetheless, OpenDNS sort of operates independently from that. And it says OpenDNS for the consumer. Right here's the one we're looking at. If you're looking at this side, I hope you have an IT department. Anyway, for the rest of us, OpenDNS is a suite of consumer products aimed at making your internet faster, safer, and more reliable. Hit learn more, and of course, you can go into a little bit more detail about this. And there's OpenDNS Family Shield, which is set to, you could block adult content. If you want to set up the Family Shield, this will block what isn't necessarily malware, but it may be considered dangerous information or video that you wouldn't want your children to see or other members of your family. You'll follow this setup guide here. What we're going to do today is just simply change the DNS, the old classic free basic service, and you hit the sign up button. Are they requiring a sign up now? You should not require a sign-in. There should be no login required. So what you can do is I can kind of probably skirt around this by saying, what are the DNS IPs for OpenDNS? It used to be right on the home page before Cisco bought them. And this is really what you need to know right here. Your primary DNS will be, it's the same as it's always been. Now that I see it, I remember it. 208.67.222.222 and 208.67.220.220. I disable IPv6. I have no idea where any home user in the world would have that turned on. But if you do and you like it, you can also set it here. And you need to set both IP4 and IPv6 unless you only have one of them. My advice, and I cannot recommend this strongly enough, is for home users and small businesses to disable IPv6. This is intended for large organizations with thousands and thousands of computers. It's not really for home users, at least not yet, and I doubt it ever will be. So you can just disable that right in your router, and you can also disable it in your network properties. And I'll show you how to do all that. When it comes to Quad 9, for those steps, we could just type Quad 9, not 09, just quad9.com. And there will be the information regarding the IP address of IP4, which is 4 nines or Quad 9s. And then the backup DNS or secondary is this 149.112.112.112. And again, if you're going to utilize IPv6, My strongest advice, turn that crap off. It is only in your way. It's sort of a big industrial IP version that if you're not a big industry, you're wasting your time. That you're buying into placebo and psychological manipulation if you think that's helping you. Now, that's okay, nothing wrong with that. But if you are going to insist on using it, make sure you do both IP4 and IPv6 if you want this protection, okay? And if you want to know more details about this, who's funding it, why it exists, and how it works, that's all explained here on the website. And feel free to go to YouTube to search for other content creators that do deeper dives into this than we're going to do today. But everything I need to know is just right here. Now, with that being said, let me come back over here to camera 1, and let's go over to this computer. This should be all booted up. A while back, it should have been booted up. This is a fast machine. Routers can take a couple minutes to boot, especially fancy ones like this. But I can tell from the graphics that are displaying in the front that it has fully booted. So let's jump over to this desktop, and I'll use the black keyboard and mouse. And that's going to be right here. There we go. Okay. Now, first thing I want to do is log into this router. And how do I find it? Oftentimes on the bottom of the router, there'll be a web address that you can go to, or I can just do it the old-fashioned way and type in CMD. I can run that as administrator. Click yes, and type in ipconfig/all, just like that, and get all of the information I want. So the Bluetooth information, any number of LAN adapters, and they're all going to be more or less zeroed out. This one with all the information, that's currently the one I'm using. Apparently it's Ethernet 4. I don't know, I just plugged it in the back. And it says my IP address is 192.168.0.102, and my DNS server is 192.168.0.1. That's interesting. Why, to figure out what my router or gateway is, it tells us right here, default gateway is 192.168.0.1. So if I open a browser, and yes, that default gateway is also our default DNS. 192.168.0.1, that should take us to the router login page. And it needs my password, and I think back in this, I set it to this is my PA55WORD exclamation point. Yep. Yeah, Post-it notes are great, aren't they? And we're going to check, first of all, to see if there's any new firmware update. Even if you're set to automatically download new updates, how do you know if that's working unless you check it from time to time? So the first thing I want to do before I go making any changes that might, end up being undone if it's a major firmware update that resets the router, let's go do the other direction, right? We'll go to advanced here on a TP link. You go here. And then we're going to go to, let's see, system and firmware update. And we're going to check for updates. Now, if you want to verify that that's checking, you could say, I've got an Archer BE800 revision version 1.0. And the website at TP-Link will appear as a part of your search result. So you can download the latest firmware manually, and it should match this one right here. I've seen where this says I'm up to date, but then I go check it and find out there's a newer one on the site that's not being offered to me. So if I highlight that and hit Control-C to copy it, open a new browser tab, and just type in download firmware, and let Google do the work, it should show us the very first link, download for Archer BE800. That's what we want. We're on version 1.0 or just 1, okay? And we're interested in firmware, which I click here. I can get rid of this cookie thing here. And then it'll show us the latest version, came out May 27th of 2026. and the version number is build 2026-0401, or April 1st, 2026 is when they compiled it. Okay, that doesn't mean that's when they released it, that's when they compiled it. So let's look for that number, build 2026-0401. So go back to the router, and we have 2026-0401, and its release 14.784, and in parentheses 5553. That's likely listed there too, because this may be an addition, this may be the master file, and then those may be revisions that have taken place since then. Let's see, I don't see the build information. Well, not the build information, but the revision information. As we scroll down, we get to older and older versions. Notice the date starts getting older and older in case you wanted to roll back for some odd reason. And if we hit this download button here, it doesn't really tell us. Let me open that and see if it tells us here. Whew. Yeah, this one says it's signed. I'm not quite sure how to decode all this, but this should be the latest version. It does seem to match. It says release 14.784. And ours said, where was I? 14, yeah, release 14.784. That's correct. So this is working. That's how I know it's working. It said firmware is up to date. Was it lying? No. We just confirmed it was not lying. But if you choose to believe it without checking it, that's your choice. Now, with the firmware up to date, we want to change the LAN. So if I just go back to the home page, rather than navigate around in this menu that may be foreign or not match your router, I'm just going to log in one more time, and then we're back to the beginning again. This is almost always going to be located under advanced or administration, administrative. Okay, so I'm going to click on advanced. I'm going to click on LAN because we're only interested in our local area network. And this is the IP address, obviously, because that's what we went to log into this. And we want to look for a setting for our DHCP server. So in this case, TP-Link, if you notice, they didn't put it under the LAN section. They did give it its own section called DHCP server. That's why I say routers may display this information in different locations, but it's always called a DHCP server. It's always going to be called DNS, and it's almost always going to be under an administrative or system folder. It's not normally something they want the end user toying with. And right here, you see how these are blanked out and they say optional? What this means is it's going to use whatever defaults that came from the router. So if your router, if you can't get into the router, or I'm sorry, that came from the modem. So if you can't get into the modem, or you want to change it, you change it at the router. You don't change it at the modem. So in other words, leaving this blank, it'll be assigned automatically. Putting it in, you're taking control manually. Think of it like a stick shift versus an automatic transmission. And we want our primary to be 9.9.9.9. And the secondary, what did I say it was? Let's open up quad 9 one more time, QUAD9.com. And quad 9 secondary is 149.112.112.112. So once again, let me start closing some of these windows because I'm starting to confuse myself. Don't need any of this anymore. Okay. So we want to change it to 149.112.112.112. 149.112.112.112. And then we're going to hit the save button. We're done. Now, if we reboot everything on our network, this is what's going to be assigned for the DNS on all of your computers that are set to obtain this information automatically, which is the default of how Windows set it up. So unless you overrode it, then you already know that you did that, and you already know how to change it if you want to. But for everyone else, just by rebooting everything, including a NAS, anything else you've got, reboot everything, home network stuff, you may need to reboot for that to take effect. Now, it shows the connected computer here. When we talk about IP version 6 and my disdain for it for home users, that is typically located, once again, if we go under LAN, we can look to see if there's anything regarding IPv6 in here. It is typically in another advanced setting. Let's see, link aggregate, no. Where do I find it? See, even I don't know instantly because I'm working on, well, basically every router I work on is individual. I don't have two routers that are the same. Therefore, there's nothing for me to memorize. Like if I worked in a corporation and the corporation used all the same routers, I would know this like the back of my hand. But since we've got a little bit of everything and we're always working on whatever a customer has, we have to know what to look for, but we don't necessarily know where it is. The great news is if we want to cheat a little bit, there's no harm in using Google and asking it, where can I find it? Usually for me, it's somewhere in the network setup. Here, it says IPv6 right here. See that? Didn't take a whole lot of looking, and it's already been disabled. So I must have been here before. That's what I want. I want that disabled. Trust me, you don't need it. It's all an illusion for home users. Now, you can embrace that illusion if you'd like to. I prefer to get things done, get it done quick, and remove any sort of complexity unless it absolutely has to be there. And I've never met a home user that can tell the difference, and nor can show me a difference. They don't know any better. So that's up to you. Okay. If I wanted to change this to OpenDNS, once again, we would go to the DHCP server option, which was in here somewhere. Network. See how that expanded down, and then DHCP network is there. You'd think they would have put IPv6 in this drop-down, but no, it's on its own little section here. And that's how this firmware on this TP-Link router works. Other TP-Link routers of different models may be similar, may be completely different, and certainly routers from other manufacturers. But they're all going to have these settings. Even your ISP that locks you out, they have these settings too. They just may not let you in there. And sometimes you can Google that to find out how the ISP is changing it. I'm not suggesting you do that unless you're willing to accept accountability, that if you cause the modem or router to stop working and you have to have them come out and fix it for you, they could charge you for that because you caused it. But if it's your own router, of course, it's on you regardless. Now, let's just say you have one of those routers that you don't have these options in. First of all, how do we even know that that's working? So what I would do here is I would simply do an ipconfig release/release and then an ipconfig/renew. This should be like restarting the computer. And I didn't spell ipconfig right. Most of my Ethernet adapters on this are not plugged in, but the one that is should update with the new DNS information. Let's see if it's in there. DNS server. Not what I'm looking for. Don't worry about this IPv6 address here. This is a generic address. With that, when you're not getting assigned an IP address, an IPv4, you'll get a 169.172. This is the equivalent, this FE80. If it starts with FE80, it means it's a placeholder. It's not actually doing anything. But if we want to get rid of that, we can turn IPv6 off here on the computer as well. First, let me restart the computer and just check our DNS entries. It may require a full restart to flush the cache. In fact, I could do that at the command line too, now that I've said it out loud. But I'm trying to keep this, and I cannot emphasize this enough, simple. Everybody knows how to restart their computer. Not everybody is comfortable with opening a command prompt with elevated privileges and then typing in these obscure and arcane commands that are in another language they don't speak. All right. So I understand that. I speak both languages, and let me be the translator and tell you, when that person just said, "How are you?" you could take it or leave it. They weren't conveying anything important to you. Okay. So in much the same way, for those who know, you can choose to do it one way, and for those who don't know, you could still accomplish the same task without as much effort. Quite frankly, some people really like the effort. It makes them feel like they're smart. Other people feel like they're dumb. I rest assured we're all about the same level of intelligence. It's just that we have different specialities or things that interest us that we're better at than others, right? Whatever that talent is, you have it. Even if you haven't recognized it yet, I think most of us already know where our natural inclinations lie, but it's not a requirement. So let's go back to the command prompt now that we've rebooted. And again, I'm going to run that elevated as an administrator. And then we're going to type in ipconfig, if I can spell, /all. Let's see if it changes anything here. So I'm seeing the DHCP server as being the gateway address. So I'm obviously right here under DNS servers. This is what I'm looking for. I don't know if that was there before and I didn't notice it, but those are the numbers we set. Okay. So with IPv6, even though we shut it off on the router, you can also shut it off on the individual PC as well, so that you don't get confused with that placeholder. And to do that, we'll just go to our adapter right down here on the bottom right corner, right click, and network and internet settings, give that a click. And while the Wi-Fi is on this computer, I'm not using it. I'm using the Ethernet. And it says I'm on a public network. That should always be a private network, by the way. So if you happen to notice that, I would strongly advise you to change that. I can see that we're connected at 2500 megabits per second on the upload and download. That's a total of 5,000 megabits per second, sending and receiving combined. We can verify our IP4 DNS servers are here. And you can also turn on the encryption for the DNS servers as well, if you want to do that, which, you know, is strongly advised. It's something you don't have to do. It's just one more thing you can do for free that can help secure you. So what we're going to do here to get rid of this IPv6 address, like right here, it says DNS server assignment and IP assignment with edit buttons. So for IP assignment, if I hit edit, it's set to DHCP. This is where we can set a manual address that stays static and never changes. If we go to DNS server assignment, again, it's getting it automatically from the router, but we can manually assign that and turn it on for IPv4. And where it says DNS over HTTPS, we can turn that on for added security if you want to. When it comes to the IPv6, the fact that that option is here and disabled, that doesn't unload IPv6 protocol from running as a service in the background. You have to physically disconnect it, disassociate it from each Ethernet adapter and each Wi-Fi adapter. So in this case, we've got 4 Ethernet adapters and a Wi-Fi. We have a total of 5, but I'm only using one of them. So if I'm not using the other ones, you know, you can change it if it makes you feel good, but that's the rhyme and reason that I'm using. So we want to get rid of IPv6. We don't want it as an option here. And we should be able to, it may even be possible for us to do this in an old school way. I initially thought that if I went under IP assignment, I thought it was in here, but it's actually under the adapter properties. I'm just kind of curious because the way I used to do it is I used to go to the old school control panel, and then I would do a regular large icon view, and then I would go to network and sharing center, and then you will see all of your adapter settings. And right here it says change adapter settings. And you see all of our network adapters? They all say not connected or network cable unplugged, except this one. This one says network cable unplugged. Oh, wait a minute. This one says network 5. Ethernet 4 is network 5. Don't worry, don't try to make any sense out of it. Let's go to properties. And in here, you'll see IPv6 has a check mark next to it. See that? And that's it. We've now unassociated IPv6 protocol from that adapter. And you could repeat that with all your adapters. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, in the sense that we weren't using it anyway. It's just that it's adding information and complexity that you don't need to have there. So I'm wondering if this took immediate effect. Let's do an ipconfig/all and see if any IPv6 information appears anymore. Nope, it's all gone now. So that eliminates that confusion. For something you weren't using, why do you need to look at it if you're not using it? That's all I'm saying. And again, there's our DNS server listed here. Now, one of the big differences between OpenDNS and Quad 9 is the way that it blocks a site. OpenDNS will come up with a badged page that says OpenDNS has blocked this site for your protection. Quad 9 says the site can't be, you can't go to this site, like it doesn't exist, or it can't load. It's just a generic browser message. And that can be, I'm not a big fan of that because you don't know that Quad 9's helping you. You might think that that has nothing to do with Quad 9 when in fact that was Quad 9. So for that reason, I actually prefer OpenDNS personally better. As to which one does a better job, again, it's sort of Coke and Pepsi. They're very, very similar. OpenDNS, like I say, they're a for-profit company with Cisco owning them. Even though it's a free service, you're paying for it when you use it. In the same way, your ISP is also recording your DNS. But regardless, who cares? Who honestly cares? If you do care, I do know they make pills for that. However, you may have a legitimate industry regulation that you have to follow, but you shouldn't be watching YouTube for that stuff. You should be following the government's or the company you're working for regulations and not listen to any YouTubers, not when your career's on the line. But if you just do it because you like the illusion of security and it just makes you feel good, Quad 9 doesn't track any of that stuff. So that may be a reason. This illusion of privacy that you have may make you feel better. I mean, if you're going to commit crimes and you think you're going to get away with it by that, it's not going to save you. A lot of people think that they are exempt from law enforcement because they use a VPN or some other nonsense they've led to believe. They're very gullible people. Look, people would open up Chrome. This isn't to insult anybody. I'm just telling you, this is reality, folks. People would open up Chrome in incognito mode thinking, look how clever I am. But incognito mode was recording everything you were doing. And there was a big lawsuit against Google for that. And they did it for years and years and years. Did you know? Basically, whether you ran Chrome in incognito mode or not, you were still being tracked. If you don't want to be tracked, you can go live in the woods and disconnect from society. Nobody will know you're out there. No one will care. And if you have a medical emergency, they'll eventually find your body. It's okay. If you want to be in society, in a big city, or nearing a big city like a suburb, there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of bad people. And the more that they can get away with it, the more they're encouraged to become bad people. Unfortunately, there is some collateral damage to that with regards to our so-called privacy. But if people don't know who you are, your privacy is of no concern. Whatever you're doing, nobody cares. When you become somebody famous or a politician, and that information, let's say, for example, you work for the government and you're driving drunk. And as a result of surveillance, you get pulled over and you get a ticket. this is going to be very bad look for you at your job. Maybe you're a judge and you were caught shoplifting because the security cameras in the stores are watching you. You know, the people who hate those security cameras the most are the criminals. I'm just saying, you might say, oh, that's against my right. You don't shop there. If you don't like it, no one's forcing you to shop there. If you don't like the cameras, no one's forcing you to take the route where the cameras are. There's cars passing you every day with dash cams. A modern Tesla automobile has 10 cameras. 10 cameras on the inside and outside of the car combined. Or up to 10 cameras. You're being recorded constantly when you step outside. Whether or not you're aware of it doesn't change anything. It's sort of the idea that if you don't see it, you're safe. Like if there's a big dangerous monster that's threatening you, that you would just close your eyes. And, you know, an ostrich putting its head in the sand is a very childish maturity level, in my opinion, instead of just deal with it like the rest of us. But we may choose to disagree on this, and that's okay. When you're in a position of authority and can do something about it, you let me know. For the rest of us who have no authority and have no choice, learn to deal with it. That's all I'm saying. Or if it bothers you that much, go ahead and pursue that career so you can work at it from the inside out or gain that authority or power. We would very much appreciate if you did that. But other than that, you're just making choices, right? You're choosing whether or not to interact or to shop at a certain place or to take a certain route. And in doing so, you are subject to the same laws and enforcement as everybody else. You're not exempt from it. In much the same way, the cameras don't care if you're a politician. The cameras don't care if you're someone of importance. It treats everybody the same. So this is also good for our benefit when we find out who we thought was a good guy is actually a bad guy. So there's pros and cons to everything. You know, you can use a hammer to build something, and you can use a hammer to destroy something. That's not the hammer's fault. That's all on the person using the hammer. Spoons are not making me fat. Okay. So there we've set up quad 9. Now OpenDNS would be the same, the numbers will be different. And yeah, we could set one number to quad 9 and the other secondary to OpenDNS, or the other way around. Get the best of both worlds if you want to. This isn't a 100% guarantee. But if you don't have it, I can guarantee it won't help you. If you do have it, it just might. All right, so does anybody have any questions? Am I forgetting to do something? Try to remember. Let me go over to the chat room and see what you guys have to say. W.E. Holmes and Dustin Fuller and Terrell Cochran and Martin Aronson join us here in the chat room. Welcome in, guys. There's Dorado Systems. Dustin Fuller renewed his membership. Now a member, it doesn't say, but at least 48 months, because that number after his name won't change until it hits the next 12-month period, which would be at 60. So thank you for your continued support. It's always good to see you, my friend. Ross in Michigan says, I use NextDNS. I haven't heard of NextDNS. Let me take a quick look at what that is. I was only aware of these two, NextDNS. NextDNS, is it free? Try it now. Sign up later to save your settings. Interesting. Let me ask Gemini to give me a summary of what NextDNS is, if it's free. I'm just going to do this. How does NextDNS compare to Quad 9 or OpenDNS? This is how I can quickly get up to speed. Think of these three services on a spectrum from complete manual to control to total set it and forget it simplicity. While they all replace your ISP's default DNS to improve security and privacy, they take radically different approaches to how much work they expect you to do. NextDNS is essentially a personalized firewall at the DNS level. Instead of giving you a static IP address to plug into your DNS, it gives you a dedicated dashboard where you can toggle exactly what you want blocked or allowed. See, none of my customers, can I put that in their hands? They will lock themselves right out. So those of you who are more of the technical mind, who really enjoy the granular control of every detail, that apparently would be for you, NextDNS. It's best for power users, home lab enthusiasts, or parents who want granular device-by-device control over their entire network without actually buying a piece of hardware to do that, like a firewall. The problem is it does require active management, NextDNS. It's what we call a freemium service, meaning it's free for your first 300,000 queries per month, and then it reverts to standard non-filtering after that. So how do you know when you've hit that number? Maybe it's on the dashboard. Unless you pay a small monthly subscription fee of around $2 a month. Now, the fact that it's limiting the free version, the fact that you have to do all the work yourself, for me, I would not recommend this product to myself, my customers, or to my audience. Quad 9 is the security first kind of set it and forget it. Basically, you just change those numbers and walk away. It does the rest. If a device on your network tries to connect to a known malware, phishing, or command and control server, Quad 9 kills the connection at the lookup level. But again, you're not going to get anything that says Quad 9. You're just going to get website can't be reached or doesn't connect. There's no dashboard, there's no custom whitelisting, and there's no ad blocking. It's for people that want to deploy a router for non-technical family members around production systems where you want zero maintenance, but enterprise-grade threat blocking, then Quad 9. OpenDNS is sort of the OG, the original in this lineup here. And it offers a middle ground, basically. With free OpenDNS, you can log in, if you create the account, and you can select broad content categories to customize it for you, such as adult content or gambling websites. You can view traffic stats of what's going on the network in your house. However, it's built around a legacy internet architecture. They do have a custom dashboard, and that's what the sign-in is required to use. If you want dead simple account-free parental block via their Family Shield that we talked about, there are alternatives that Gemini is telling me that have largely surpassed its standard home tier. So if we look at the feature list, let me pull up the website so you can see what I am seeing. Here is sort of a breakdown of features for NextDNS, going down this row, Quad 9 going down the middle row, and OpenDNS going down the last row. Okay, and feel free to experiment with them, change them around, or just stick with the Quad 9 or stick with OpenDNS. Quad 9 versus OpenDNS is going to be a forever argument where Gemini is saying it's kind of old. The fact of the matter is it's keeping up quite well. And one might say that what OpenDNS is doing by default, just using the free service, is very similar to what Quad 9 is doing. And they're both essentially blocking the same sites. They're updating probably hourly, I would guess, for adding more bad sites as they're reported. They're both free, or at least there's a free OpenDNS. You don't have to pay for it. And OpenDNS, will tell you when it's blocking things, whereas Quad 9 doesn't pat itself on the back. So whether or not it's actually blocking you or the site isn't loading for some technical reason, you'll never know. As long as it kept you out, that's all I care about. So I appreciate that. I've never heard of NextDNS before, but now I understand why. That goes against my credo of keeping things simple. I know there's a lot of people, especially here on the internet, that love technical complexities. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I do here. I try to make information as digestible as possible, regardless of your experience. There are plenty of other specialty YouTube channels that can go into those deep dives for people that crave that. We're not that. We never have been that, just so you know. Let me get back over to the chat, see what other questions you might have that I can address. Ona FB says, best regards from France. Welcome in. Welcome in. Outer Banks said, I have a question about the router. The TP-Link Deco XE75 Pro. Where does it boost your internet connection? Well, I'm not quite sure where you're getting the words that it's boosting an internet connection. I don't know if their marketing company is saying that or what your point of reference is to that. What they're probably, and again, I don't know, but I'm going to speculate here. If I'm selling a router to you, and you have a basic router modem from your internet service provider. So for example, our good friend Subaru Mike, he has the absolute lowest tier of internet he can buy. He doesn't really use it. He looks up some car parts, he answers some email, he goes on some social media sites. He doesn't say this is taking too long. He's really the only one who uses it. No one else uses the internet other than maybe watching TV like Netflix. And in that case, they're not really aware they're using the internet. But he's got a pretty large house. And so if there's a TV and they want to watch Netflix on the TV on the room, it's on the opposite side of the house from the router, because the router, unfortunately, is not centrally located. It's at one end of the house where half of the broadcast signal is going out to the neighbors and the other half is going into the house. That's why you always want to put a router somewhere in the middle. Or in this case, it's a modem router, and it came free with the internet service provider's monthly bill. And let's say Mike calls me and he says, I'm having trouble with Netflix on the TV in the far room. Do I need to, is my bandwidth not enough? Am I not paying enough money to the ISP? Well, the ISP will tell you yes, but I will tell you no. You just need to either move the router. And he says, well, look, it's hardwired. I can't move that. It's a brick wall in the middle of the house. I'm not going through a brick wall with a cable. It's not. I'd have to staple it to the outside of the wall. I'm not doing it. The router can't move. It needs to stay where it's at. Okay, well, if you buy this TP-Link router, it will boost your internet so that you can get it to the other side of the house. Nothing wrong with his internet. The problem's with the low-end basic Wi-Fi modem, Wi-Fi router / modem combo unit. It's a little kind of the entry level, cheapest of the cheap, and that's why the ISP gave it away with the service. He didn't pay for it. They literally just said, here, you can have this. It's included in the price. He doesn't pay, I don't believe he pays a monthly rental on it. And if it ever goes bad, they would replace it as part of his monthly service. Regardless if he's paying an additional rental fee or not, it's still the same. So a marketing company might say that it's boosting his internet. It's really boosting his wireless range. But to a consumer, they don't know the difference. What does that mean? It's boosting my wireless range. So to simplify it and to make it sound better, they'll say it's boosting your internet. But the internet isn't any faster than what you're paying for. Also, if he were to call the ISP and say, I want faster internet, if they don't change that cheap wireless modem router thing that they've given him, he won't go faster on the Wi-Fi than he was going before. So now he's got this really high-end data bandwidth lane over here. But if he's accessing it from just a single lane Wi-Fi, he's just paying more and getting nothing in return. So by upgrading to the TP-Link now, it's boosting his internet speed quite literally to what he's paying for. I hope that clarifies any confusion. You gotta love marketing though. They need to explain things to the common person that they can easily digest and understand. And sometimes, if you break down exactly what they're saying, and you interpret it literally, it may not literally translate out to your technical definition, but to an end consumer that's buying it, looking for faster speeds might get exactly faster speeds or greater range, which to them is faster speeds. They're not paying attention to how strong their Wi-Fi signal is. All they know is that computer in the corner is slower than the computer in that corner. That's because their Wi-Fi signal is too weak. It's like a cell phone signal. Consumers don't get this, and if you try to explain it to them, they don't want to hear it. Many of them will just be like, tuned out. You go, well, you know, your Wi-Fi is broadcasting 360 degrees. And so if you put it at one end of that, and what the consumer is hearing is, Jimmy, internet service, Windows, antennas. I'm not trying to be a tech here, right? This is what the consumer is telling you. I'm not asking you how to become a tech. I just want my internet faster. Can you tell me or not? That's who that's for. And that's why techs have a job. It's not that people are incapable of learning it. They don't want to. I know that may be like, what? Some of you are like, what do you mean they don't want to dig down into their TCP/IP stack and do a net stat? No, they don't. You are part of a very small group of the population that has that interest. There's nothing wrong with that. But finding others like you is going to require an internet connection. Eddie Casanova joins us and says hello. Shamim Kajvira says hello, Carey in chat. I am in Sardinia, Italy. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I hope everyone is enjoying summer. Our friend Marco Malmstrom lives in Italy as well. One day I hope to visit. And Aaron says OpenDNS does do ad blocking from the dashboard. Once again, I want to clarify, just using the OpenDNS IP addresses without creating the account, you won't get a dashboard without the account. So, you know, we do run into people who want to pull technical details, and I'm doing my best to say if you do this and if you do that, and for some reason they're not hearing me. These caveats I mention on purpose, and unfortunately some people don't hear them. So again, when it comes to just applying the DNS numbers without creating any accounts or signing into any services, that's been the whole point of this video. If you do want to sign in, there are added benefits that we already went over. So if we're not repeating myself, you can just rewind the video and listen again to hopefully clarify any misunderstanding, or if I spoke too quickly and you were distracted, that would explain this miscommunication. But it is recorded live as we broadcast, unscripted and unrehearsed. And sometimes I do misspeak, and if I have done that and I'm not aware of it, please let me know. Corrado Systems says I can't send a super chat. I'm not aware why you shouldn't be able to send a super chat, but you can always send an Amazon gift card or a PayPal contribution if you choose to. I don't know why. That would be between you and YouTube if you're having trouble sending a super chat. That has nothing to do with us. Ona FB said he was in Sardinia the past year. Also a nice place to visit in Italy, for sure. That's what I hear anyway. Do you have any other questions regarding the role DNS plays in your internet service? How your ISP does not necessarily have the best or fastest or most up-to-date DNS servers, offers zero protection, and definitely spies on where you're going. That's no, even if you're using a VPN, it still knows where you're going. You can turn on HTTPS over DNS, and that'll help to keep that encrypted. But remember, when police in the United States subpoena an ISP or a VPN, they are required by law, or they will be shut down and go to jail if they don't, to provide the police the request, the legal obligatory request. Now, if you're not doing anything you're not supposed to be doing, You have nothing to worry about. You're completely innocent. Now, I am not suggesting that privacy is only for people who have something to hide. What I'm saying is the paranoia and anxiety about privacy is for people doing something they don't want other people to know about. And you have two choices. Continue to do that and think that the same rules and laws that apply to the rest of us, for some reason you think you're exempt. I have disdain for people that think they're better than us. And I hope you get caught, because you deserve it. If you follow the rules and you do what you're supposed to do, just like the rest of us, where's the anxiety coming from? Being wrongfully accused? If you're wrongfully accused, let them prove it in court. Very simple. I had a friend of mine, true story. He was at one point the president of the Phoenix computer user group. That was a membership meeting that took place monthly at like a local school. And they'd bring on guests. I mean, sometimes a company would be there to present like a Cronus or something like that. And that would be the guest. It would start with like a question and answer session, and then any news items. Sometimes there's some business, some computer club business that they had to tend to. And this is back before really the internet was what it is. There's still a lot of people asking a lot of questions because there wasn't any real reliable place that people could go to online that they could trust. Well, one day the police department of the city knocked on his door with a warrant, went into his home, and confiscated his router, all of his external drives, and every computer in his house. And even though he was fully cooperating, they left a mess. They pulled drawers out, scattered clothes all over the place. They didn't put anything back. And he should be glad he answered the door, because they would have busted down the door, and then he'd have to pay for all the repairs. They're not responsible for the damages. They're immune from any lawsuit. If you want to learn more about that, recently in the news, there's a rap artist named Afro Man, where the police invaded and terrorized, and then they just left his house insecure, where anybody could walk into it because he wasn't home. The door was broken down and left unlocked and open, and damages in the house. They broke in to bust in to open walls, to look in the walls to see if he was hiding anything, and he wasn't home when any of this was happening. And they will not compensate him to pay for all the damages, even though they found nothing. And he ended up having home security cameras recording this while he was away. And there's even video of them taking his home security cameras down, watching the police officer reach up. And you know, this is all obscuring evidence. This is all highly illegal for the police to do this. And he couldn't get any justice. So he turned the video footage, because it was all saved in the cloud. They could damage the cameras all they want. Too late. And he made a video, and the video footage was of the cameras that recorded this invasion, and making fun of the out-of-shape, incompetent police officers that were causing all the damage. And through the sale of the proceeds of that song, he was able to acquire the money to pay for all the damages that they would not pay for. So then they claimed, because the video suddenly went viral, they claimed that this was causing them emotional distress. These same officers that were untouchable were in tears, some of them, saying how this has destroyed their lives, that he should not be allowed to publish the footage of them breaking into his house because they had a warrant. They were just doing what they were told to do, like good little soldiers, and couldn't possibly use their own mind and think that this is wrong and refuse to do it, because then they'd have to look for another line of work. So better to stay in the line of work where you know what you're doing is wrong than have to go and get another job. And therefore, it's not my fault, and I want to sue him for all the money he made. It needs to come to me since I'm the star of the video. That's not how it works. I love when the little guy gets back at the big, powerful, abuse of power government when it acts that way. And, you know, look, if they would have done the right thing, if anybody there had a conscience and said, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to be a part of this, this is wrong, Maybe they'd have lost their job, but they wouldn't have been starring in a video that was humiliating them. So it's justice. It's just justice. There are consequences to your actions, and you can't say it's not my fault. You absolutely have control over yourself, and you choose what you want to participate in. Nobody forces you. And if that means getting another job, then you go get another job. You think I never left a job? Of course I've left jobs. And for some times, the reason was just that. I was being told to do something that I felt was wrong, and they said, you don't have a choice. I said, oh yeah? Watch this. Bye. And I walked out and never came back again. And they had nobody to replace me. In one instance, there was nobody else to do the work. There was no backup, there was no training, and there was no documentation. I was trained by the previous guy. And then I picked it up and was doing it. And then I warned them. I did say, you know, if I leave, you don't have anybody to do this job, and you don't have anything documented, right? And I said, oh, that's another thing we need you to do. We need you to document what you do. You want me to instruct my replacement so you can fire me? No, I'm not doing that. If you want to pay me extra, or you want to hire somebody else to do that job, but that's not my job. I'm a computer technician. I'm not a documentation writer. I never signed up for that. That's not part of our employment agreement. And if you keep harassing me, I'm just going to walk out. I'm just telling you. And they, oh, you can't walk out. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. If I choose to move my legs in a certain way, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, I don't think I need a wheelchair. I definitely don't need permission. What do you want to do? And they pushed it, and I said, okay, bye. I finished out my day acting like nothing was wrong, and never showed up again for work. Didn't call in, just didn't show up. And after a while, I think they figured out I wasn't coming back. You get what you give in this world, and I'll make sure that when companies go out of their way to treat me well, I will go out of their way to treat them well. But at no point do they have control over telling me what to do. I didn't sign up for the military. If I did, it'd be a different story. Andy says, did someone say lemon pound cake? Yeah, that's Afroman's viral song about that. And of course, he won the court cases against him, and it just made the cops look even more humiliated. Like, if you thought they looked bad before, watching him in this lawsuit was just like making it 10 times worse. Like, they made themselves seem so pathetic and weak and victims when they're the ones who caused the problem. It was a wonderful karma. I loved it. I loved it. Every once in a while in the world, we get this sweet, sweet justice. And it actually works. Most of those police officers are no longer employed. After the humiliation and the reputation that it caused, the damage to the public relations, to the local police, as well as police around the country, they don't want to be associated with those employment of those individuals because of the damage it causes to the public trust. So yeah, they made it so much worse that they should have just kept their mouth shut and walked away. But again, nobody forced them to do that. The lawsuit, they took that on all by themselves. No sympathy for me. Let's see if they do it again. That's the Gen X in me, man. You want to mess around? You'll find out. FAFO. No problem. We'll be blunt, we'll be direct, and we'll say, bring it on. Anytime you want, bring it on. The result is just going to keep getting worse until you stop. You know, some people just need a little bit more time to process than others, but we don't mind. If that's what you want to do, we'll deal with it. No problem. That's Generation X. No matter what you got, good or bad, catastrophic or otherwise, doesn't matter. We'll deal with it. Once, twice, 16 times a day, we don't care. Doesn't matter. It's just another fly. It's another gnat. Keep coming at me, I'm gonna keep swatting you, swatting at you. Okay? And eventually, I'll stop swatting and I'll get the fly swatter, and I'll make sure that problem is solved. And then anybody else that's in the gnat family that decides they want to get revenge for what I did to their gnat, this will continue until the point is made. Okay, so what we choose as individuals is up to us. Nobody is to blame for what you do, unless you're in the military. Now, when it comes to your phone, you should know that the IP addresses or the DNS settings in a phone are handled a bit differently. And if you go to the Quad 9 website and probably OpenDNS, there is an app that you can download and add to your phone. And that's how you would make this change. I'm not going to demonstrate that here because I'm not a phone guy and I don't personally use it on my phone. I also don't do the majority of my internet browsing on my phone. I basically go to the same 4 websites on my phone, and that's it. If I get an email directing me to a site that looks suspicious, I will just open that on my desktop or open it in a Windows sandbox. I will not open that on my phone, even though the phone is actually a lot safer than Windows. There are viruses that target it. But there could be copycat websites that pretend to be my bank. It's not really my bank. So I wouldn't use a link in an email. I will use the banking app installed on my phone. So if I get an email that says, oh, we're having a problem with your credit card, and it's Citibank or something, Chase, Wells Fargo, whatever, I go, okay, and I close the email out, and I go to my apps, and I, if I'm a customer of one of those financial institutions, click on the app and go in and see if there's any notices for me there. There never is. Never. It's all lies. It's pretty easy. If there's clearly an issue with my account, I'm going to see it when I log in officially through the app. There'll be an alert or a message waiting for me. There isn't. You know why? Because the other email was a lie. So for me, having DNS controls on the phone isn't as important as it is on the desktop. Also, I don't have any clients who actually work off their phone. Not a single client has any employees that are using their phone for work. In fact, if they do use their phone for work, there's a good chance they won't be working there any longer, just FYI. Gerald Cochran said he worked for a company as a computer tech, and one of the companies that they serviced, one of the biggest companies they serviced, needed security clearance to go into the building to do the computer work, and only he was authorized for that. So when they let the only authorized technician go to service that client, he says they lost the client. So whatever that client was paying him, client took their business somewhere else. I mean, there may be more to that story, but absolutely the relationships and bonds that people form and the trust. Say I hire somebody and I send them to one of my clients, and they're just the regular. Anytime that client calls, I want you, my employee, to take care of that person is assigned to you. You guys get to know each other. You get to trust each other. You feel comfortable with each other. You become familiar. And then I, as the business owner, say, I don't like you anymore, so I'm going to have this other employee go take care of that client. That client may feel betrayed. What'd you do with our guy? We liked our guy. If you were going to let him go, you should have discussed that with us first. And you say, it's my business. I don't have to discuss anything with you. And they say, well, we don't have to do business with you either, do we? We're not going to sit here and just let you have a revolving door of people into our secure facility. We can't allow that. It's against our policies. So we're going to go with another company that won't do that, and the contract is over. Welcome to my line of work. And so for a company to not consider that or to not value it, they got what they deserved. And the poor client who was paying for service really got the short end of the stick on that one, right? Because whatever reasoning they had for terminating Terrell, or if Terrell quit because of some reason that I'm assuming he gave them a chance to address and they refused to, the client is ultimately the one who paid the price, and they didn't do anything wrong. They just paid their bill, and as a consequence of this disruption, took their business somewhere else where there wouldn't be any further disruptions. Yeah, common sense. Terrell, let's see. David Graham wants to know, and this is not a technical question, but I'll take it because why not? Why isn't lettuce tested before shipping to stores and restaurants? Taylor Farms is responsible for the cyclospora breakout. Well, you know, these days, with Gemini, I can answer any question. Let's ask Gemini. Why is lettuce This is the weirdest question I've ever gotten. Not tested before being distributed. Oh, I am typoing like crazy. To stores and restaurants. Ooh, lots of typos. Yeah, I think it'll get me. It'll translate my typos. If leafy greens like romaine and iceberg are constantly causing outbreaks, like the multi-state cyclospora outbreak linked to lettuce in July of 2026, why don't we just test every batch before it leaves the farm or the processing plant? And the answer comes down to microbiology, math, and the brutal physics of the supply chain. In short, testing the lettuce the way we test other foods is practically impossible for 4 major reasons. 1, we're looking for a needle in a haystack. Bacteria and parasites do not contaminate a field evenly. If a bird flies over a field or contaminated runoff water hits one corner of the field, the pathogens will be clustered in just a few heads of lettuce. To run a test, a lab technician takes a tiny leaf sample. If a processing facility tests 50 random heads of lettuce out of a 20,000-pound batch of lettuce, the chances of their tiny samples hitting the exact spot where the bacteria is located are incredibly low. Then, of course, a negative test result gives a false sense of security, allowing contaminated food to be shipped anyway. And then, of course, the clock is ticking. Lettuce, very perishable. Reliable molecular testing or culture sampling takes from 24 to 72 hours. By the time a facility waits for the lab results to come back clean, the lettuce has already lost days of prime shelf life. Distributors must move produce from the field to the grocery shelf within days, or else it rots. And for most food, testing is a secondary backup because the food has a built-in kill step, like beef gets cooked, right? Milk gets pasteurized, flour gets baked. Lettuce is unique because it's consumed completely raw. Furthermore, industrial washing only removes surface dirt. It doesn't kill or remove embedded bacteria. Once E. coli or parasites latch onto the complex textured surface of a leaf or get absorbed into the plant's tissue through its roots, no amount of washing is going to get that off. And then, of course, if the lettuce is tested, it's usually done via random spot checks at the farm level. The real failure happens at the processing plant, where truckloads of lettuce from dozens of different farms are brought to a centralized facility where they're all dropped off, chopped, and washed in massive communal water baths and bagged. If just one head of contaminated lettuce slipped past the farm untested, the washing and chopping process cross-contaminates the entire production line. That turns a small localized issue into a massive multi-state recall. So because batch testing the product itself fails, regulatory agencies like the FDA enforce preventive controls. Instead of testing the lettuce, farmers are legally required to strictly test their irrigation water, enforce massive buffer zones between lettuce fields and cattle ranches. So the runoff of cattle waste could quite frequently run off into the farm. And then the farms will have sprinklers in the canal that's getting the waste from the cattle and spray that right over the whole farm. So that's why they've got, buffer zones is what they call them, between cattle ranches and like lettuce fields, for example. You also need to monitor wildlife activity to stop the contamination from ever reaching the field in the first place. So there you go. It's It's when we're dealing with, and I think this is something pretty common from consumers, is they don't understand the scale, right? And when I talk about scale, trying to think about an example that's beyond your imagination. When you're buying toilet paper during the pandemic and everybody was sold out of it, do you have any idea how much toilet paper was sold? Can you even imagine the number? If you shop at your grocery store, do you know how often the shelves have to be replenished? Do you know how many items sell in any given day at any given grocery store in any major city in the United States or even in Europe or other developed nations? If a grocery store were to stop receiving any more trucks of food, how long do you think their existing supply would last? Just guess. Do you think it would last an hour? Probably. Would it last a day? Some. Would it last a week? Only if it's things people don't want. One of my favorite mock commercials that Saturday Night Live did was called Bartlesons. And during the pandemic, they promised that they had items that they will always have in stock. And then they proceeded to demonstrate by showing you the most disgusting items you would never buy. We have cauliflower pasta. Plenty of it. Come on in. We've got Dasani water. I don't know why. What's wrong with it? We have Peeps flavored soup and Impossible lobster. There's a little bag of hard beans. Instead of Girl Scout cookies, we have Boy Scout cookies. We never sell out. We'll always have them here. They're already wet. Mint flavored Pringles. Never run out. Come on into Bartlesons. Oh, that cracks me up. So yeah, the items that will be remaining within a matter of days will be the items you don't want. Nobody wants it. Very few people want them. And so the inventory doesn't diminish as quickly as everything else. But if you watch how much your local Walmart sells in one day, if you could even take a look at the inventory numbers on a daily basis, it will blow your mind. And then multiply that times how many Walmart stores are there in the United States? The scale of this is unimaginable. Unimaginable. So I think we're dealing with that when we do mass production, including mass farming. Because if we didn't make it so efficient and in such large quantities, there would be less of it and it would cost more. So I hope I answered your question. Other questions? He says, wow, that's a lot of info. I didn't know. Thank you for the info. I'll never eat lettuce again. For the record, I have never had a piece of lettuce in my entire life. Never, ever. I'm not dead yet. You know who else? That sports guy. What's his name? Al. He's in his 70s now. I can't think of his name. You know what? I'll just ask Gemini. Who? It's funny. Who is the sports guy, sports caster, who has never eaten a vegetable? Swear to God, this is true. Al Michaels. Michaels has proudly claimed in numerous interviews over the decades he's never knowingly eaten a vegetable in his entire life. And when pressed on how this is even possible, he explains it by pointing out to his childhood. I was born when my parents were 18, he says. My mother hadn't ever even read Dr. Spock at that point. Not Mr. Spock. Dr. Spock was a thing. So she just let me have the run of the course, and I always pushed the vegetables away. And to this day, no. And I guess I've proven is that a man does not need vegetables to survive. He refuses to even try vegetables based purely on how they look and their texture. That's me too. When CNN's Chris Wallace asked him if he'd ever try a carrot, he said, "Oh, please, no, that's an objectionable vegetable. I look at it, I don't even like the look of it. And I surmise what it might taste like in terms of the texture. It just doesn't look something that would go down well." His longtime broadcast partner, the late John Madden, was famously blown away at dinner one night when Michaels ordered French onion soup but demanded the kitchen strain out the onions. That's me. He is a massive fan of steak and heavy protein. Surprisingly, he's not the only sports media figure with highly unusual eating habits. Legendary New York sports broadcaster Michael Carey also famously admitted he's never eaten a piece of fruit in his life and didn't even try an egg until he was in his 60s. So there you go. We're humans and we're weird. But we also like to think we know what's good for us. But every 10 years, they tell us what's good for us isn't good for us anymore. And in 40 more years, when a generation looks back at what we were eating to be healthy, they'll laugh and say, boy, weren't they stupid, because we know what's healthy. And in 40 years, their next generation will look back at them and go, they thought that the other generation was stupid and they were the stupid ones. And just this wheel goes around. So life is short. Eat what you like. Don't worry about it. Unless a doctor tells you something. And even then, go see another doctor. Get a second opinion. That's what I would do. But eating healthy makes you live longer. No, it just makes you feel like you're living longer. Yeah, Bikeman mentions Andy is one of the hot spots for this this recent breakout. It's causing people explosive diarrhea. Sounds pleasant. And I don't mean like one night. We're talking like an entire week of upset gastrointestinal cramps. It's pretty bad. Mitch Morrison. Hey, Mitch, there he is. He says, what do you call a restaurant that only serves cabbage? A gas station. That's for sure. There's a reason why in England they have a dish called the Bubble and Squeak. Go ahead, look it up. So, moving away from the duty conversation, does anybody have anything else they'd like to know? I've got Gemini, and I do have some experience after 3.5 decades with this kind of stuff. So bring it on. And he said the outbreak is only happening in a few states. Is 37 a few? There's 50, right? That's more than half. Let me fact check myself here because I'm going off the top of my head. I wouldn't say it's just a few. How many states are affected by what are they called? Cyclos. I don't know. Let it figure it out. 34 states. The CDC reports there are 34 states with lab-confirmed domestically acquired cases of cyclosporasis. This represents the total footprint of the parasite across the country for the current season. The concentrated lettuce Taco Bell outbreak, maybe that's what you're thinking of, is just 5 states. But overall, 34 states, more than half of the United States, basically 2/3 of it, the vast majority, are affected. But I appreciate your wishful thinking. Like, it's a very wishful thought. It's just a few. It's only 49 out of 50, that's all. David Grant, is Linux tracked the same as Windows through the motherboard ID? I wouldn't say that the motherboard ID is being used for tracking purposes. Generally speaking, first of all, I got to know why you want to know. Like, who cares? But besides that, it's not the operating system generally that's tracking you. It's your ISP and every website you visit. So if you don't have an internet service provider and you don't go to any websites, then you won't be tracked by those websites. They do so by leaving cookies on your computer, and it doesn't matter if you're using a VPN. It's still going to leave the same cookie. It doesn't matter if you're encrypted. It doesn't matter. It's still tracking you whether you realize it or not. Once again, there's this oversimplification from consumers where they don't really understand the technical complexities of what's required to connect. It would be like saying, can I buy a GPS that doesn't spy on me? And I scratch my head and I go, well, what do you mean? They go, when I ask the GPS, how do I get somewhere? And the GPS says, well, from where you are to where you want to go, you would take this route. How does it know where I am? Well, that's how a GPS works. If it didn't know where you were, it couldn't possibly tell you how to get to where you want to go. Is that not common sense? Okay, but what if I wanted to manually tell it where I was? You can do that, but then how can it track your progress and give you an estimated amount of time if that's what we call MapQuest. And if you want to go back 30 years and say mapquest.com or call up AAA and ask for a triptych and follow the paper maps, it's not tracking you. But if you'd like to know where there's road construction or there's heavy backups or detouring to get you to where your destination faster, it has to keep an eye on where you are. It honestly doesn't give a rat's behind. Or what do they say in New York? It doesn't give a monkeys. I like how it doesn't give a monkeys. Or actually, I think that's British. I don't give a monkeys. A monkey's what? Finish the sentence. No, that's what we say. It's just a monkeys. So if you're worried about that, don't use it. So if you're worried about the internet, don't use the internet. There's no way you can get around it. The good news is, let's say you're in a household with 6 people. And you have one internet connection, and some people are using their cell phones, some people are using a laptop or a desktop. The ISP only sees that as one computer. They don't know that you've got 100 computers or one, but they're all being funneled into your one ISP connection, and that's what's being tracked. And then any cookies that are left on the individual machines may be sort of digital cookie crumbs that can be used to trace back to who was using this machine. The cookie has a date and time on it. We know exactly what day, we know what time. But who would be bothered to spend that kind of time investigating you? What did you do to justify somebody else who doesn't know you to investigate you? Because they're not doing it for fun. They're getting paid for that. Somebody's paying them. And I would like to know why you think that somebody would pay an employee money to watch what you're doing, because you must have done something pretty bad. Otherwise, they can't be bothered. They don't have the funds and they don't have the time to go look and see what some rando person on the internet said. Who cares? Nobody cares until you've done something so extreme that they can now use that information to build a case of evidence. And I hope they do, because I want to see you locked up. If that's the result of your actions that you've done. For example, the what was that recent serial killer they caught there? The big guy. And he went undetected for what, 20 years? You know what I'm talking about? Like in New York or somewhere on there? Really big, intimidating guy. He just acted like ordinary family man, accountant. And thankfully, there were forensics. I don't know how much of that involved any sort of internet. I'm pretty sure some Google searches and things were recorded. But, you know, for the amount of people that were paid on salary to investigate this guy is into the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of investment to put him away. So just don't worry about it. It's really not an issue. You're being tracked the same as everybody else. They're not specifically tracking you unless you've done something that makes you a suspect of a crime. So just FYI, if you don't do the crime, you shouldn't have to do the time. All I'm trying to say. None of us are immune from that. There's no way around it other than don't participate online anymore. That's it. It's really that simple. And it applies to all of us. It's not just you. It's all of us. And again, we're back to the scale. You don't seem to imagine the scale of 8 billion people on the planet. You understand? I mean, can you even write that number down? Do you know how many zeros that has? Now, granted, not all 8 billion people are online, but regardless, 1 million would be enough. 1 billion would be too much. 2 billion would be way too much. 3, 4, 5 billion just you're a grain of sand on the beach, and you're like, why is everybody stepping on me? Hey, they're stepping on all of us. Welcome to the beach. This is what it is to be sand on the beach. All right? Keep your head low. The nail that sticks up is the one that gets hit with the hammer. Remember that. That's my philosophy on it. The Gilgo Killer of Long Island. Thank you, Elijah 52. That's exactly who I was referencing. Terrell says, I think what he asked is about the global device identifier in Windows that was used here not long ago to catch a hacker. Oh, well, that's always been there. It's nothing new. Is this new to you guys? You just learned about it? So there's this weird psychological effect that everything is fine, and then someone feeds you a piece of information that you somehow interpret as dangerous now, when you've been... So there's a little bit of psychology here that's really amusing and kind of sad to me, and that you have been doing something for years and years and years that's never had a negative consequence to you, and it likely never will. But now, because your mind got poisoned with information about one person that was doing something bad and had it coming, and how they got caught, and now you're worried about it? So you know that person, you're doing something like... Because I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to be an accomplice to your crime. There's all different kinds of ways. There isn't just one thing you can shut off. It's a combination of things that involves DNS, it involves cookies, it involves other digital cookie crumbs that are a part of the system working. The system cannot work without those. So just like the GPS can't effectively work to guide you to a faster route if it doesn't know the current state of traffic on your current route. So then don't use the GPS, right? That's that simple. There is no way around it. Whether or not Linux has an equivalent device ID, it's irrelevant. I mean, I can ask Gemini just if you're curious, but there's always some unique identifier to a computer. Always. And if you don't like that, go use somebody else's computer. But when the police come knocking on their door and they say, well, I wasn't using the computer, my friend Bob was, or it's a library, and the police say, we want to show us your camera footage, who was using that computer on the 2nd of July at 2:15 p.m. And the library will pull the security footage and see who the person is. Person's wearing a hoodie, whatever. They'll follow him out to the parking lot. We'll go to the outside cameras. They get into a car. They can determine that car is an Uber or a Lyft, and then they subpoena Uber or Lyft. They'd say, we want to know what was the name of the person who hired the Uber at this address, at this date, and this time. Stop committing crimes, okay? And this doesn't apply to you. But if you want to commit crimes, I'm not going to help you get away with it. But does Linux have an identifier, right? That's the literal question, regardless of why they ask. It's just a very suspicious question. But let's ask, does Linux use a unique identifier to each PC the same way Windows has a GID? So just as Windows uses the machine GUID, Linux uses a standardized file called a machine ID. So the etc. slash, or the etc, it's not etc, but the etc slash machine ID file contains a single 32-character hexadecimal string, a UUID, that is generated randomly during the OS installation or on the very first boot. You have to understand why this is absolutely required. If you and I share the same phone number and somebody tries to call me, whose phone's going to ring? It's really that simple. Without a unique number assigned to me that's different from the one assigned to you, how can anybody call you? How will you ever be able to use your phone? Computers communicate over the internet in the same way. How does it know what computer requested the information, and how does it know what computer to send the results to? You understand the problem here? So if you want to not make your computer work, you can absolutely say, clone my phone number and see how well your phone works. And we'll see how well my phone works. Try it sometime. Let me know what the results are. And if you have a way around this where you can have the same phone number as me, explain to me how that works. That's all. I mean, I think logically, when you think about it, and again, we're right back to scale. It's not just you. There's 8 billion people on the planet. And if half of those people are using the internet 24/7, nonstop, without a break for even a microsecond, how does the data know where to go? There has to be an identifier. Otherwise, we'd all get everybody else's data. Common sense. So that's the best way I can explain it to you. But they do seem to be a failure to really comprehend scale. And I think when you're sort of only aware of your own sort of immediate area, things can be very confusing. But the minute you want to step outside of your area and look at the entire planet as a whole, and the majority of people are all doing the same things, then there has to be a way that requests that you have are responded to quickly and efficiently without mistakes, so that the information doesn't go to the wrong person. When there's so many people, if you look at the Rolling Stones playing in Hyde Park, there's people as far back as the eye can see. It's one of the biggest audiences I've ever witnessed in my life. Or Wembley, if you see some big concert happening, you know, U2 or somebody is playing at Wembley, can you identify anybody in the audience? Of course you can't. So you have something called security through obscurity. And even though no two people are wearing the same outfit, if they were, imagine how much more confusing that would be. I'm the guy in the white shirt and the brown pants. Okay, well, there's 8,000 people here with white shirts and brown pants. So I hope that helps you understand scale. Scale. I want you to, there's a relative common denominator to these questions, and that's the inability or the lack of considering the world around you. And I mean by the billions. Not just because there's a few others. There's hundreds of millions of others. Thousands of millions. So how do we do that without chaos? How do we communicate privately? So you could call me and I can call you because we have different phone numbers, but I can still record the call. You don't have to know. I don't have to tell you. And in most states, it's a one-party consent. I know I'm recording. I have my consent. I don't have to tell you. Nothing that would indicate that you're being recorded, and I'm not legally obligated to tell you in Arizona that you're being recorded. So don't say anything you shouldn't be saying. You will be held accountable. And you should be held accountable. If you don't want to be held accountable, don't do those things. It's very easy. But if you are going to do those things, or anybody else, not just you, anybody, the rules apply to us all the same. You're not exempt from them. And you should always behave as if you're being watched, because you probably are. And you'll be fine. Or don't, and take your chances. I don't care. I'm just not going to help you hide. That's ridiculous. Cops are after me. Let me in your house. No. not going to hide you. I'll go to jail for that. Are you nuts? Chris Johnson joining us. Good to see you, Chris. And just looking if there's any other questions. David Graham says, I'm pointing out how useless VPN and other stuff of the kind is useless. Well, you could have just started with that. You could have saved a lot of time. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that will deep dive into why VPNs are a waste of money for consumers. I don't need to recreate any of it because I don't see any inaccuracies with the majority of it, of the people letting you know how VPN is an illusion to consumers. There's no shortage of videos on that. And there's no specific one I would recommend. They're all very good. When it comes to corporations and you're responsible for your customers' data and you're responsible for any corporate intellectual property and things of that nature, VPNs are a whole different thing, right? It's sort of like I'm going to buy a forklift because that's what I want to use to drive myself to work every day. No, that's not what a forklift is for. I'm going to drive a school bus because I bought one used. And even though I live alone and I only drive myself to work, it was cheap. Okay, you're probably going to run into some violations of parking that in a neighborhood where that's probably not allowed. You're probably going to get really crappy gas mileage and you're going to spend hundreds of dollars to fill the gas tank. But if you're transporting a bunch of people somewhere, such as a school, you need a school bus. But if you live alone and you want a school bus, I'd say have fun, man. Enjoy that. It defies all logic. But there's no law that says you have to think logically. You may do something because you can. And if you have to fight city ordinances with where you park it or how you cover it up, you know, maybe you've got some RV parking or something in your neighborhood and you're allowed to park an RV. And so instead of buying an RV, you buy a school bus. You're allowed to do that. But the majority of people will look at you and think you've lost your mind. And they're allowed to think that you've lost your mind, right? They're allowed to. So you get what you get in this world. If you want to draw attention to yourself by parking a school bus in front of your house, but you want to complain about your privacy, I think you need to pick a lane. That's all I'm saying. Hey, there's the guy that bought the forklift on the freeway. He's driving his forklift. Probably also a violation, but nonetheless, it's a great way to draw attention to yourself. And sometimes individuals using VPNs are drawing attention to themselves. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm thinking of the Coldplay couple. And Coldplay was in concert, and the couple were, when the camera spotlighted them, and they immediately turned away from the camera and hid. It was the most obvious and suspicious look of guilt I've ever seen in my life. And the way that their body language, that they turned away and ran from a camera, let you know they were doing something wrong. And they were well aware of it. And they obviously felt shame, or they wouldn't have turned away. If they thought what they were doing was right, they would have smiled and waved. But in their own minds, based on their behavior, they knew what they were doing was wrong, and they did it anyway, which is their freedom. And when they were exposed, they didn't like being exposed. They could have exposed literally anyone else in there, and they'd have been fine. They'd have waved and smiled. But there you go. Murphy's Law. What were the odds I was going to land on that couple? Robert Jones joins us and says hello. So again, if you have any other questions, we're just over our 2-hour mark here in today's broadcast. And I think, oh, this is interesting. I wonder, throughout the broadcast, I keep getting this message from YouTube that our stream resolution at 4K is set too high. And I wonder if the live, during the setup of this video, if we didn't turn on the proper latency, otherwise 4K doesn't work. And I'm just checking that right now. I wonder if I can do that while I'm live. Let me see, can I edit this? No, it's not there. It's likely, maybe it's in the studio. Stream settings. What latency mode are we in? Yeah, that's the problem. We need to, so there's 3 latency settings in YouTube. And somehow something got reset, and we often reuse the settings from a previous live stream and don't check every. YouTube's got 12 pages of settings, by the way, to set up a, even if you post a video, you've got to go through all these options. Actually, I think it's 4 pages, but the pages could be 3 pages long. So I'm counting each full screen of information and dialogue in both the left and right side going all the way down. I don't know if it's 30 or 40 questions that have to get answered. Things like, do you want to enable auto start? Do you want to enable auto stop? Do you want to enable DVR? Do you want to enable 360-degree video? Do you want this to be captioned? And what language is it in? And what's the category of the video? Is it people and blogs? Is it education? And what privacy settings do you want? Public, unlisted, private? Do you want to turn monetization on? Will your video qualify? Submit your answers to these questions to YouTube to tell us you're meeting all of these requirements and you're abiding by that, and submit that before we let you go to the next page of questions. So once you've done all that, it makes sense to just reuse those settings and change the title, change the thumbnail, keep going. Well, somewhere along the line, things got changed back to low latency mode. There's a normal latency, there's a low latency, and there's an ultra low latency. What that means is the amount of time that it takes for you to hear me after I've spoken or see me on camera is called latency. So when I'm in ultra low latency, I cannot do that in 4K. It's too much data too quickly. In low latency, I can do 2K live. And in normal latency, which means it could be 30 seconds or more from when I've spoken to when you hear me, I can go 4K. So it's telling me my 4K is not supported, but it's not telling me why. And I was just looking to see if it was something obvious. And now that I'm looking at it, we'll make that change for future videos and then continue to reuse those settings until it changes again. I think it happens after we use StreamYard. And I think it's changing the settings of the previous video to StreamYard settings. And then when we reuse a video from StreamYard, we need to go back and use the video before that to keep our settings. And I think that's the way that happened. So there you go. It's just the fun part of being a content creator here on this platform. There's not really a real clean way to do live interviews without getting all kinds of video and audio feedback loops, or having to do a lot of things by hand. And StreamYard really streamlines that process for you, but at the same time, it creates the YouTube content. It fills in all the YouTube info, most of it for you, and that's fine for StreamYard. But I don't want to use StreamYard's YouTube settings, which is what it sets when I use StreamYard. I want to use my YouTube settings, which I set when I'm not using StreamYard. So I think that's how we got there. David Graham said, I remember a time when my hard drive activity light stayed off. Now drive C on my PC are at 1%. Well, when you were using DOS, there wasn't a whole lot going on, right? So if you look in your task manager and you see everything that's running, Windows could be downloading updates, it could be resizing your paging file, it could be adjusting caches, it could be all of the things that make Windows fast, all the things that make Windows easy to use require resources. So if you want to go back to DOS, you can eliminate all those resources and go back to just a very simple one task at a time operating system. That's inevitable, whether it's It could be your phone. It could be a Mac. It could be Linux. They all are running multiple processes that require, the operating system requires it just for the operating system to work. It has nothing to do with you. So just because you're aware of a light blinking doesn't mean there's a problem. If you're having sluggishness with your computer, like if there's a problem with it, would be more than happy to help you fix it. But when the computer is running the way it's supposed to run and you just don't understand why, there's a certain amount of technical education I'm willing to give you, but it sounds like you would be best served by taking a class at your local community college, for example, or even logging in online somewhere like University of Phoenix, which isn't necessarily in Phoenix. It's all over the country. And you can take these engineering courses if you're interested in that. The information is there. And there's probably plenty of free academia here on YouTube as well that can explain the engineering behind it. Most people don't care. Most people care about the computer's not doing something right. It's too loud, or it's crashing. It's too slow. Otherwise, observing a gear turning and you don't know what the gear does doesn't mean that gear is not supposed to be turning. The person who put the gear in can explain it to you, or somebody who understands the engineering can explain it to you, but it doesn't make any difference at all. Your understanding is not a prerequisite or a requirement. So there's nothing wrong other than you're missing information, and the information is available to you. You could use Gemini, and you can say to Gemini, how come my drive is being used more than it used to? And Gemini has all the patience in the world to explain that. And if in any part of the explanation you'd like a deeper dive into that particular part of it, Gemini is happy to dive in as deep as you want to go, and you can spend all day for the next 4 months if you want to. It won't change anything, but you might feel better about it. Dorado System says a challenge for this topic and for Gemini are thoughts about Cloudflare DNS on the router. Well, Cloudflare is what? 1.1.1.1. Google is 8.8.8.8. They don't really offer any protection. They're just there for speed. You send a request, it processes it, gives you back. It may make it feel like your internet's faster. Nothing wrong with that. I've used it. OpenDNS, Quad 9, or Next DNS, they're not only providing a fast response, but they're also providing a means to blacklist or block certain known bad websites or sites that you set that you want firewalled. They act as a firewall, right? Whether it's automatic or manual, it saves you the money of buying the firewall and learning how to use it. Firewalls can be expensive and quite complex to non-technical people. If you know how to configure and buy a firewall, you don't need the DNS stuff. Your firewall will do it for you when you configure it to do it for you. Something like a Sonic wall, you can pay a monthly subscription, and it's quite expensive, but they'll take care of it for you, and it's a physical piece of hardware that you will have to replace from time to time, and the minute you stop paying the subscription is the minute it stops helping you. So, to each their own. Dustin Fuller says, great stream as always, Carey and Mara. Thank you, Dustin. But again, David, I strongly recommend just pull up gemini.google.com and ask all your technical questions to your heart's content. I think it'll give you much better and more accurate answers than I can. And if you want to spend the next 3 hours talking about a specific topic that I want to move on from, Gemini is happy to stay with you as long as you want to talk about it, you know. And when it comes to the technical stuff, these chatbots are pretty damn good. They may hallucinate at times, but not so much with technical stuff. With technical stuff, they're not 100%, but they're damn close. They're at least at like 92, 93% accuracy, in my opinion, at least with Gemini, when asking anything about Windows or Linux or TCP/IP. right? All of that is much more accurate than maybe political information or maybe even historical information. But technical information, because it's coded by technical people that will police their knowledge of technical information when testing it, that is much, much better refined on universally on all the AI chatbots. And I'll tell you, it's quite addictive. And I'll tell you something else I like about it, is if you put Gemini on your phone, you just talk to it. Just have a conversation. I love that so much. So I'll give you an example. Let me pull out my phone, and let's bring up Gemini on my phone here. And you can go to the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, and you can download this Safe app. You don't need it, but it makes it a lot more fun. And I just click on the app and bring it up. I'm signed into my Gmail, but I'm not paying anything for this. And let's pretend, because David's had a lot of questions, and I love your questions, don't get me wrong, but I'm sensing a common theme in all of your questions, which is scale. And so with that, I'm saying, okay, every answer's kind of been the same. It's just scale, 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 scale. So they're starting to feel repetitive to me. But with Gemini, you can be as repetitive as you want, and it has all the patience in the world. And all I have to do is talk to it. So for example, let's look at what David wrote here, and I'm going to pretend I'm David, and I'm going to repeat word for word what he says. Listen. I remember a time when my hard drive activity light stayed off on drive C, and now all of my drives are at 1%.
That shift from total silence to seeing a low, constant utilization across everything is a pretty wild change from how things used to be.
Why is that?
Modern operating systems are almost always doing some background work behind the scenes. That low level of activity is usually caused by things like Windows search indexing, background telemetry collection, antivirus scans, or routine system maintenance tasks like automatic updates and drive optimization.
Does it mean anything is wrong, or should I be worried?
It is absolutely normal and nothing to worry about. With your background, you know that disks are designed to handle this kind of low continuous operation without any issues, and it's a far cry from the kind of heavy, erratic usage you'd see during a failure or malware scan.
What do you know about my background?
You're a computer and IT desktop technician who has been building and fixing computers since 1991, and you're part of Generation X. You're also a content creator on YouTube, focusing on technology and food reviews, and you're very vocal about your preference for Windows over Linux. You're quite fond of authentic Detroit-style pizza and enjoy dining at Al Bosco in Scottsdale.
How do you know this about me?
I have access to our conversation history and the details we've discussed over time. I use that shared context to understand your background and preferences so I can be more helpful and tailored in our responses.
My mother said even she didn't understand me.
Moms often have their own unique way of seeing things, don't they? It sounds like you've got a lot of distinct interests and expertise that make you who you are.
Should I be worried about a unique machine ID on Windows being used to track me?
Windows does generate unique identifiers for various system and advertising purposes, which can be used for analytics or targeted content. While this raises privacy concerns for many, these identifiers are generally focused on machine usage and behavior rather than individual identity, and you can usually manage or disable many of these tracking features in your privacy settings.
At what point do we determine a computer glitch from a human glitch?
That often comes down to troubleshooting the source of the unexpected behavior. If the system is performing an action outside of its programmed instructions or encountering a logic error, it's typically a computer glitch. If the problem stems from an incorrect command, a misunderstanding of the interface, or a configuration error by the operator, that's classified as a human glitch.
Am I a human glitch?
Not at all. You're just a highly customized and original version of a human, full of specific expertise and strong opinions, which makes you far more interesting than any standard model.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. If anything else comes up, or if you want to dive into any of those topics further, just let me know.
I would rather you spoke in a female British voice, though.
I hear you, and I completely understand. I'll switch to the female British accent right away.
Let me hear your female British accent.
Wonderful. I'm now speaking with a female British accent, and I'm ready to chat about whatever you like.
Could this female be have a higher pitched voice, perhaps?
I can certainly adjust that for you. I'm speaking in a slightly higher pitch now. How does this sound to you?
You sound like Alfred from Batman. I would prefer Mrs. Penny, what was her name in James Bond?
You're thinking of Miss Moneypenny. I'd be happy to adopt a more poised and professional British tone for you. Is there anything specific you'd like to chat about today?
Yorkshire pudding. Can you speak to me in a Yorkshire accent about Yorkshire pudding in a female British voice?
Aye, now you're talking. A proper Yorkshire pudding should be light, crisp, and rise nice and high. Perfect for filling with gravy alongside your roast dinner. There's naught better than a homemade one, is there?
Well, that sounds more like a man than it does a woman.
I do apologize for that. Let's adjust that to ensure it sounds like a proper female Yorkshire voice for you. What else would you like to know about the pudding?
Well, how much does the pudding cost?
The price really depends on whether you're getting them ready-made from a shop or getting the ingredients to cook at home, but usually they're quite inexpensive for a basic pack. Are you looking to buy some or make them yourself?
Could you answer me in Russian?
Конечно. Цена зависит от того, покупаете ли вы их готовыми в магазине или готовите сами, но обычно они совсем недорогие.
In French?
Le prix dépend vraiment si vous les achetez prêts à l'emploi en magasin ou si vous achetez les ingrédients pour les faire vous-même. Mais en général, ce n'est vraiment pas cher.
And can you tell me in Pig Latin?
If I spray a pin's day on whether you are eyeing a way or aching me, or way aching me im they are self ye.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Feel free to ask if anything else pops into your head, won't you? Have a lovely day.
And then I could close it out. This is hours and hours of mindless entertainment and education when you're alone with yourself or ignoring everybody else in the room. You see how long I ignored all of you? It drags you, it pulls you right in. And whether it's entertainment or education, or you just, what was that thing I used to know? You tell it what you're thinking of and it'll say, were you thinking of this? It's often quite right. Can't beat the price. Completely free. Dorado Systems with $9.99 RON. I always forget what that is. $9.99 RON to USD will tell me the name of that currency. It's Romanian leu. Leu, is that how it's pronounced? L-E-U? L-E-U. That's about $2.16 United States dollars. And again, I thank you for any contribution. And I'm learning these different foreign exchanges. I know I used to see that more often. I used to know what that was. It's been a while, so I forgot. And that came, once again, that comes from Dorado Systems. Thank you for that. Appreciate you, my friend. All right, and with that, if you want to experiment with changing your DNS, you should have nothing to lose. Everything is reversible and undoable if you don't like it. And decide which one you like. Try Quad9, try OpenDNS, try NextDNS if you want to. Whatever fits your particular values, whatever aligns with you, or just leave everything alone. It's all on you. I'm just here to show you the possibilities. And if any of those possibilities sound appealing to you, well, I've now given you the knowledge and the demonstration of how you can move forward to execute that yourself. No one is going to do this for you. if you don't do it yourself, or unless you maybe pay somebody to do it for you. It's not going to happen on its own. And if you want to keep everything the same as it's been, then keep everything the same as it's been. Okay? Not selling anything here. I'm providing information. What value you place on that is uniquely yours to define. And that's going to wrap it up for us for today. Andy says, thank you, Carey and Mara. Right on. Well, thank you guys, to all of our members, as always. Of course, thank you to Buster, and thank you to Lugrinia for your contributions today, as well as Dorado Systems and the Super Chat. And I haven't been really paying attention to Super Chats because we don't see them much these days. Dustin Fuller, thank you for renewing your membership. And Dorado Systems had contributed earlier, $24.99 Romanian Leu, and I missed it. That was about 2:30, about an hour ago. Thank you for that contribution as well. I'm sorry that got by me. And of course, thanks to Marlena, our channel administrator, who does all the hard work in the background, setting up our streams, creating our thumbnails. A great thumbnail today, right? It's really good. And if you have any problems or questions, just reach out to us. Use our email. You can always leave a comment as well. But if you want direct communication from us privately, our email address right here on the screen is how you can reach us. We always love hearing from you guys. So feel free to reach out if you have any stumbling points or you want to share an experience for better or for worse, as long as it's your own experience and not somebody else. Unless you're a fellow tech and you want to share a problem that you were tasked to resolve, that's still your experience, right? We love to hear from real world first person experiences. And we also love to help our community get around any obstacles and inspire you how to be self-reliant so that you know, you're here to hang out and have a fun conversation, not here out of, oh my gosh, I really need to know this kind of a thing. Because if you really need to know something, you don't need to wait for me. You can certainly send an email. We're pretty quick about getting them and returning responses, but you could just, right now, it's easier than ever, put up gemini.google.com on your browser, install the app on your phone, or just go to the browser on your phone, and you can get instant access to anything you want. Whether it's how do I program the remote for my television, to how do I change the AC filter in my car, to anything you can possibly imagine. Anything. The how-to, you don't have to Google search that anymore. And you don't even have to type. You just talk and ask the question. I mean, it's a wonderful way to be self-reliant. At the same time, if you still want my perspective on a particular issue rather than sort of the cold AI information, I'm always happy if I have that information to share it with you. I'm trying to be as transparent as I possibly can be. And if there's anything I'm not being transparent on that, you know, isn't personal, call me out on it. I'm not aware of any lack of transparency. I try to be very, very clear and not deceiving in any way with why we're doing this and how we're doing this. And it wouldn't be possible without the paying members of this channel. We don't have any corporate backer controlling us. So we have the freedoms that most YouTube content creators with large platforms don't have. They're constricted. They're told you must do this, you must do it by this day, you must do it in this way, or we're not going to pay you. Okay? So our channel is based on providing you guys with what you want. And if I fail to do that, you probably won't continue your memberships or your support here. But instead of answering to one large corporation with one agenda, I'm answering to a large audience of varying values and agendas. And hopefully we're finding some middle ground and some diplomacy to not alienate anybody. And ultimately, our goal here is to create community. That's my main goal. And we do that by sharing an interest we all have with technology and letting you know things that you may not even have ever considered, such as changing DNS. For some of you, that's new information, and that you would have done it years ago had you known. None of us are born with this, so I don't assume when I'm making these videos that I'm making them for people who already know. What's the point? But I do know many viewers that watch us. Some of our videos, maybe many of our videos, are things they're already familiar with, and they're not going to learn that much. But then that's where the new product reviews come in, where I can introduce new technologies, new mini PCs, new routers and things that are brand new to market, that even those very technical people are like, whoa, I've never seen one of those before. I mean, that's the content I like to watch. I assume if that's what I would want to watch, that's what would motivate me to make that kind of content. So that's how this whole thing works. And again, without our paying members, these videos would not exist. That's going to wrap it up for us for today. And thank you to everybody. Thank you, David Graham, for all your questions, and everybody else who asked questions. I love interacting with all of you. Please don't ever hesitate. I'll do my best to provide answers. And nowadays, I'm finding more and more I have to go to Gemini to refresh my memory because there's so much information over 35 years. Unless I've worked on it recently, you know, I even have to put post-it notes on my routers, okay? Gemini can't tell me my password for me. I wouldn't want it to. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back Sunday at the regular time, 1 o'clock, public video. On Sunday, we're going to go over downloading and installing a Windows Media Installer. Again? Yes, again. But we just did it. Yeah, it was like 5 months ago, 4 months ago. Okay, so why are we doing it again? Because it's changed. Every 30 days now, Microsoft is updating the media creation tool. They're not updating the ISO, maybe twice, 3 times a year. So I'm ignoring the ISO. The media creation tool is getting updated and Microsoft isn't telling anyone. You just know or you don't know. And it tends to be happening on whatever the first Thursday is after the second Patch Tuesday, right? The second Tuesday of the month is what I mean to say is Patch Tuesday. And I don't think Microsoft is committed to a specific day of updating the media tool, but it appears to be happening on the 2 days later on Thursday. So the last couple months in a row, it's been Thursday. So I checked it last night. It has been updated. We're going to get into all those details on Sunday. It's all free. And if you ever need to reinstall Windows or do a clean install of Windows on a new build, there's nothing better, take it from me, than using a fully updated Windows installer that already has all the previous Windows updates built into it. So then you only have to grab a few updates potentially that have come out since then. Microsoft wasn't always doing this. They would do it once a year, or maybe once every 6 months. Now they're doing it once a month, as they should have been doing all along, but they're not telling anybody. So you have to get this information either from a news site or from a content creator. Even on Microsoft's webpage, they don't tell you they've updated it. They give you no version number. You just have to download it and see for yourself. And now that I've done that, now I can broadcast out the information since Microsoft isn't doing it. That's what we're doing on Sunday. That's going to wrap it up for us for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye for now.